It was close to midnight at a rundown gas station on the edge of town, the kind of place where the buzzing fluorescent lights make everything look colder than it already is. I was standing by the magazine rack clutching a cup of coffee that had gone lukewarm an hour ago. Nobody really looks at you when you're homeless, you know. You just blend into the background like an old sign or a cracked tile. But that night, I couldn't stop watching the guy at the counter, a giant of a man in a worn-out leather vest with Reaper riders stitched across the back. He looked like trouble to anyone else, but I saw something different. He was fumbling with his wallet, pulling out crumpled bills, his hands shaking just a little. On the counter sat a loaf of bread, some soup cans, a gallon of milk, and baby formula. The cashier kept swiping his card, and every time that red light blinked, it was like a punch to the gut. "I'm sorry, sir." "It's still declining," she said, glancing nervously at the security button under the counter. The guy muttered, counting coins. $12.50, 15. "I'm short $8. His voice cracked just slightly, like he was trying not to sound desperate. Behind him, people shifted impatiently. A woman in scrubs whispered, "Those biker types. Always up to no good." Someone else muttered, "Bet he's stealing." And that whisper, that judgment, it hit me harder than I expected. Because I'd been there. I knew what it felt like to be looked at like a threat just for existing. The biker glanced back at the line embarrassment etched across his face. "Look, I'll put something back," he said softly. "Not the formula. My baby needs that. Please." I don't know why I moved then. Maybe because nobody else would. Maybe because I couldn't watch someone else get crushed under that same kind of weight I'd carried for years. I dug into my coat pocket, pulled out every crumpled dollar I had, $8 I'd made collecting cans all week. I laid the bills on the counter without a word. The store went silent. The cashier froze mid-swipe. The biker stared at me like I'd just handed him a gold bar. "No, man, I can't take that." "You can?" I said, simply pushing the money closer. The line behind us stopped shuffling. People stared like they couldn't figure out what was happening. I turned to face them. "You see him and think trouble because of the jacket," I said, voice steady but tired. "You see me and think worthless because I don't have a home. But tell me, how many of you would empty your pockets for a stranger?" No one spoke. The whispers died. The biker grabbed his bag of groceries and followed me outside. "Why'd you do that?" he asked, voice rough. "Because someone should have done the same for me once," I said, pulling my coat tighter against the October air. He stuck out his hand. "Name's Johnny." "Eli," I replied, shaking his hand. We stood under the streetlight for a moment, two men both used to being judged by the way we looked. He handed me a card, Miller's Auto Shop. "If you ever need anything, man, you call me." What neither of us noticed was the teenager sitting in her mom's car across the parking lot recording the whole thing on her phone. She'd upload that video before dawn with a simple caption, "Homeless man gives his last $8 to help biker accused of stealing." By breakfast, that video would have 10,000 views. By lunch, it would be everywhere. A couple of days later, I woke up to the sound of thunder. Or at least that's what I thought. The sky was clear, but the ground was shaking. I stepped out from behind the gas station, still rubbing sleep from my eyes, and froze. Motorcycles. Dozens of them, then hundreds rolling down Main Street like a roaring wave of chrome and leather. People came out of shops and houses to watch as the convoy filled the road. At the front was Johnny, grinning like a man who knew something I didn't. They parked in formation outside the alley where I slept. A mountain of a man in a leather jacket stepped forward, flanked by bikers with tattoos and scars, their vests covered in patches that told stories of long roads and hard lives. "Eli Thompson," he said, voice deep and commanding. I swallowed hard. "Yeah, that's me. My name's Big Hank. I run the Midwest chapter of the Reaper Riders. We saw what you did for Johnny." "It was just groceries," I said quietly. "No." Johnny cut in his voice, thick with emotion. "You gave me dignity when nobody else would. You stood up when the whole store was ready to tear me apart. That ain't small, brother." Big Hank held up a rolled piece of paper. "We did some digging. Heard what happened to your hardware shop. How a rumor destroyed your business. How you've been living out here for 3 years. We can't give you back that time, but we can do this. He unrolled the paper, a blueprint of a building. My building. My hardware store sketched out like a dream I'd given up on. He handed me a notarized deed. As of this morning, that empty lot's yours again. Paid in full. And we're here to rebuild it. I stood there speechless as 300 bikers unloaded tools, lumber, and supplies from trucks I hadn't even noticed arriving. They worked like a well-oiled machine, clearing debris, pouring foundations, framing walls. It was like watching a miracle unfold in fast forward. The whole town came out to see it. At first, people just watched from their porches. Then they started bringing sandwiches, iced tea, folding chairs for the older bikers. Sarah, the cashier from that night, walked up to me, eyes wet. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I should have stood up for you. For Johnny." I just froze. "You were doing your job," I told her. "No, I wasn't," she said firmly. "I ignored you when I took out the trash every night. I pretended not to see you sleeping there. I won't do that again." One by one, people came forward, neighbors who'd believed the rumors, customers who'd abandoned my store. Even Mrs. Foster, an elderly woman I used to deliver firewood to, approached with a walker. "Eli," she said, voice trembling. "The night your tools disappeared, I saw a truck in your lot. Thought it was you. Didn't say anything because I didn't want to get involved. I'm sorry. I should have spoken up." She handed me an old photo of me and my dad standing proudly in front of our shop. "Your daddy would be proud." Those words hit harder than any punch I'd ever taken. By sunset, a brand new frame stood where my store had been burned to ashes. Big Hank brought over a leather vest, black, worn and stitched with the words, "Honorary Brother," and underneath "Family." He draped it over my shoulders. "You stood up for one of ours when the world turned its back. That makes you one of us." I could barely speak. "I don't deserve this." Johnny grinned. "You earned it." That night I stood on the steps of my half-built store looking out at a sea of motorcycles and people, neighbors, who'd once crossed the street to avoid me. 3 days ago, I began voice shaking. I was invisible. Tonight I'm surrounded by brothers I never knew I had. This isn't just a building. It's proof that kindness isn't dead, that brotherhood is real, and that sometimes all it takes is 8 crumpled dollars to change everything. The cheer that followed shook the ground. Engines roared like a choir. I felt alive for the first time in years. 6 months later, Thompson Hardware was back in business. The bell over the door chimed constantly. Kids came by after school to help out, and Johnny stopped in every Saturday for coffee. The lot across the street had been turned into a community garden. People treated me like I'd never been gone, like I'd never been that homeless guy. One evening as I was sweeping up, the door chimed, and there she was, Linda, my ex-wife. And next to her, our son, taller than me, now wearing his high school jacket. "Hey, Dad," he said softly. Linda smiled. "We saw the video. Everyone did. Tommy wanted to see your store." I felt my heart stop. She reached out, touching the patch on my vest. "I never thought I'd see you in one of these. Never thought I'd earn one," I said, voice thick. She hesitated. "Maybe Ohio isn't home anymore. Maybe home is wherever you are." We stood there, 3 people who'd been broken apart by lies, finding our way back together in a store rebuilt by strangers who became family. And you know what? Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness ripple further than you could ever imagine. Sometimes standing up for a stranger means standing up for yourself. And sometimes $8 is all it takes to rewrite your entire life. So, tell me, have you ever judged someone by their jacket or where they slept at night? Have you ever walked past a person who needed help and kept going? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Because if there's one thing I've learned, one act of courage can spark a movement. And you never know when it might be your turn to change someone's life.